you do not understand white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you do understand will confuse you. In all of these 9 areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Anywhere on the planet, minute by minute, day by day, all of the time, all of the time, all of the time.
Okay. Let me say good morning to everybody all over this planet that have tuned in to today's program, which is the Counter Racist Code show, featuring Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. Again, we thank you for your listenership. There are some that are on the line. Many have much to talk about in regards to what has happened this past week. Very troubling times. But any of you that have listened to the program already knows that Neely Fuller has given the answer to this, and he does it every week. Sometimes for me it's frustrating to hear basically the same questions over and over. In fact, one of the Gmails I got this week asked me if when people receive the book, do they read it? And that's a legitimate question, because sometimes you wonder. For the last going into the 4th week, Mr. Fuller has asked this question about the smartest people in the world, black people, what have they done to solve the race problem? And that question, again, going into week number 4, is still prevailing among the chats, among the groups that I've been associated with, especially in light of what has happened this week. And we will get into that. If you'd like to be a part of the show, you can do this. Call this number, 516-453-9921. And if you have a question or comment, just press the number 1 button. Make sure that you give the call screener your name so that you can definitely be heard. Be heard. If you are a first-time caller, you can tell the call screener that, give the call screener your name, and they will alert me that you are a first-time caller and you will also be heard. You can also go into the chat room where there's a lot of chat that goes on in there, and I imagine today will be no different. Last week we had a record number of people in the chat room, and they were chatting it up pretty good. And usually there's some good information in there, real good information. You can get it, and occasionally I will read it. But do not use the chat room to ask Mr. Fuller a question. That is what the 516 number is for. So be sure to do it that way. You can also contact me via the Gmail, and I've gotten tons of Gmail this week, tons of Gmails concerning what has been the predominant news story this week and still going on, along with these mass killings, it seems like everywhere. But there's a reason why. And if you've listened to Mr. Fuller, you know who's responsible for it. Many don't want to hear that, but it's true. If you do the logical counter-racist thought, then you can clearly see who's behind all of this. You can Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, B-O-B-B-Y, and you can ask your question right there. Now, I'm going to ask, when you do not write me a novel. Somebody did, and I obviously cannot read it because we have a 2-hour program, and I just can't read it like that. Make it short, concise, so that I may ask Mr. Fuller that question and we can move on. But if you write me a novel, I'm sorry, I just can't do it. We are constrained by radio in this particular window. Okay, I believe that is all. Oh, yes, one more thing. Speaking about the books, you can get the books and all the material that is going to be discussed by Mr. Fuller, and these are suggestions, by going to producejustice.com. And on there, not only other books, but past shows and other types of information that you could get on there. And I believe that's all. Okay, today being the last day of January the 31st, 2023, today's program. Let me present to some and for others introduce Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. Mr. Fuller, good morning, and how are you?
Good morning. I'm still learning.
Okay. Before I get into the thoughts and expressions of your mind, I thought that you would mention that this statement, which has really come into prominence, again, very loud and very clear for the 10% that really pay attention to that. And I would like for you to read it when you say at the beginning of every program that you and I have done. And that statement is, and you can finish the rest of it, if you do not understand white supremacy, racism. Could you complete that?
Yes. If you do not understand white supremacy, racism, because white supremacy is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. I'm going to say that again. If you do not understand white supremacy, racism, what it is, what is white supremacy, and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Now, some people have asked me down through the years, well, it's not logical. They made statements and asked questions at the same time. They said, what's logical about that? You don't understand white supremacy. Everything else will confuse you. You won't know how to drive a car. And I say, yes. Where do you think cars come from? Bunny rabbits? Everything that you are looking at that means anything to you is all connected with the system of white supremacy. That's what I'm saying. Everything.
Yes.
And I'm saying any area of activity, economics. What is economics? The use of time and energy. You're a black person walking around on the planet Earth. How do you use your time and energy? And the presentation that I'm saying, putting flesh on those bones, everything will confuse you. If you're a black person and you're on planet Earth, you have time and you have energy. Even if you're in a nursing home, you have some energy and you have some time because you're here. So who dominates that time and energy? White people who believe in racism. That's what supreme means. I'm not talking about all white people.
Mm-hmm.
Might be multitudes of white people that don't believe in racism and don't practice it. I don't know. In answer to that question, how many of them is it? But they are, those who are. And they're the most powerful people on this planet in the year 2023. Nobody is more powerful than them in the form of a person. Now, if you're talking about spirits, that's something else. But in the form of a person, there are no people more powerful than white people who believe in white supremacy.
Yes, yes, sir.
And that's in economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex,
and war. And directly or indirectly, anything that a black person is involved in is dominated by the white supremacists. Now,
yes,
that
sir.
statement is flat, meaning it's right to the point. And it's either true or false. And if it's false, everybody should jump all over Neely Fuller for having made that statement and just kindly straighten him out.
Absolutely.
And say, okay, what people are more powerful? Directly or indirectly?
I'm glad
I
you
would like
mentioned...
to know if I'm making that mistake, because I'm not supposed to make that kind of mistake. That's a huge mistake, if it's a mistake.
Yes, sir. I'm glad you mentioned those two words, directly and indirectly, because that's the effect. Either it's going to be direct or indirect. That's just the way that it is. I bring that up because in discussion this week, I heard you to say at several times and many times that if you saw, and you asked this question, that if you solve the race problem, that the problems that we have or experiencing would go away. A lot of people do not believe it. A lot of people do not accept that. And they come up with this thing called, I hate to say it, but a black racist. And you mentioned something about the policeman, and you gave your definition of what a policeman does. And the news this week, they said that at least 5 policemen, and they happen to be black, beat and killed Trey Nichols, okay? Then the question was asked, well, were they race soldiers? And there were a big discussion came up about that being race soldiers, and it made me think about the opening statement. If you do not understand white supremacy, racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Mr. Fuller, I know you've answered this, but I'm going to ask you before we continue on with today's show, is there a such thing as a black racist?
No, not one. Because if you're talking about a black racist, you're talking about he's supreme.
Uh-huh.
There's not but one people who are supreme, and that is whatever white people there are who believe in and who practice white supremacists are, in fact, supreme over everybody who is not white. 24/7 in all areas of activity, economics, education. Black people are going to get an education. That's who they're going to get it from. And they say that. I mean, almost boast about it. We'll tell you about, how many schools they have been to. What school? What school? What school did you go to? What was the name of that school sometimes? Some of our most prestigious schools are named after whom? Stop and think about it. Some of our most prestigious, they're really not your schools. If you're going to get schools at all, it's going to be directly or indirectly by the white supremacists. Now, a lot of black people say, from the time that I started the school to the time that I finished, I didn't see a white face nowhere. I went all the way through college. Everything that, was black. But you got to ask a logical question. Where did they learn?
Yes. Okay.
Where did the ones you're looking at, the ones that you brag about, I mean, the ones who really gave you a whole lot of insight on this and that, how to fly an airplane and all that.
Yes, sir. Before we move on, one of the last things that was discussed in group was the comparison between what happened to Rodney King and then what happened to Trey Nichols. And I mentioned that the white officers that beat Rodney King could be suspected as being race soldiers, but not in the case of what happened to Trey Nichols. Just
you have law enforcement officers. That's what it's in the code book. That's what they're called. Law enforcement. That's all of them, whether they're black or white. You don't have police officers nowhere on the planet. There's no such thing as a police officer on planet Earth in 2023 in the system of white supremacy. And the system of white supremacy is the only government on the planet.
Okay.
I'm going to make that statement again. The system of white supremacy is the only government on planet Earth in the year 2023. Now, that's either true or false.
Yes, sir. Okay. If you do not understand white supremacy, racism, let's go to Cleo in Houston, I believe. Wait a minute, Cleo, see if I can get you in. Cleo, I got you in. Good morning. What is your question for Mr. Fuller?
Good morning, everyone. Long live NFJ and forever live Logic. Mr. Fuller, in light of the recent murder of Mr. Tyree Nichols in Memphis, Tennessee, at the hands of black boys in law enforcement uniform, can you please explain why the white supremacists are still the most to blame and why we should expect more of the same?
Because you have white supremacy. White supremacy is designed to dominate and mistreat people who have color in their skin. That's what it's for. That is a value system, a total value system in all 9 areas of activity of the people of the planet. Economics, education, it's all about color. Entertainment, all about color. Labor, all about color. Law, anything dealing with law or law enforcement, all about what color are the people. What color are the people involved in this quote-unquote law or law enforcement? Who has the most say? Who has the most say when it comes to law enforcement? Who are the people who have the bottom line? Everybody goes running to, ultimately, to say, straighten out this mess. You ain't going to get it straightened out unless you're talking to somebody white. Period. It's a whole lot of mess going on. A whole lot of people with different opinions about this and that. A whole lot of people been hit in the face. Somebody just got shot again and again and again. School shootings, you name it. You want to straighten this mess out? First thing you look for is a white face. Otherwise, you ain't straightening out nothing. Because that's where all of the decisions are made that can really stick. Say, well, we got black leaders. There's no such thing as a black leader in the system of white supremacy. That's either true or false. There's no such thing as a black leader in the system of white supremacy. All of the leaders are black people in the system of white supremacy are white. Every last one of them. You have black what? Spokesperson. I'm one. The people calling in on this program is one, or two, or three. Oh, you got a lot of black people who speak. That's all they do. I'm one of them. Oh, are you talking about speak? Boy, just grab any black person, including people who are in what you call the rap business. Boy, they can speak. They speak. And people listen. But that's not leadership. See, the white supremacists can speak and act. And when they act with what you call authority. They are the only real, what you might call, authorities. Put that in quotes. Now, what does that mean? That means they have authorship of anything that's going to be done that's going to count. See, it comes down to the doing part. Got black preachers all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
You got black people holding signs all over the place. That's speaking. Black Lives Matter. We got 1,000 signs. We're going to have some more. Balloons, that's a form of speaking. After a killing, on a fence, Cupid dolls, little teddy bears, out there in the rain, on a lot of fences, wherever you find black people, you have balloons and teddy bears and people hugging each other and singing songs. And after they do quite a bit of crying, then they start doing some hand slapping again. Got to slap some hands. Got to do a whole lot of hugging in front of the funeral home. And ho-hum. Okay, see you next week when the next thing happens. See, we know. We know.
Yes, sir.
But we pretend we don't know who Big Daddy is. Why? Because if we don't, it feels so helpless.
Mm-hmm.
And we become suicidal. But the way to solve any problem, according to logic, is to first of all know what the problem is, face the truth about what the problem is, and really, like in my case, I even start feeling better. Even when the truth is just as ugly as it can be. But it's true. That's what I want to know. What's true? What's true and what's false? I don't want to hear nothing, including Neely full. That's a mistake. Or that when people are lying, I don't need that. I need just truth. Well, people who say that now, they're really on to something.
Yes, sir.
In fact, even in the movie The Godfather, what did they keep saying, a theme that you keep hearing suddenly, that give me the bad news first. When you're talking about Marlon Brando playing the part of The Godfather, what did Tom Hagen, his lawyer, say in the opening scenes of the movie when he was talking to that movie producer?
Mm-hmm.
He said the Don wants to hear bad news right away. The good news that'll take care of itself. Black people need to learn something there. Give me the bad news. Well, the bad news, you're in the system of white supremacy. Oh, push that off the road. That makes me feel bad. That's black people. Don't say that they're supreme. Well, that's the truth. Did you want me to tell you the truth, or you want me to lie to you? Take your pick.
Alrighty.
Well, just tell me something that make me feel good, make me proud of myself. What do you got to be proud of? What are you going to be proud of? You got a legacy of slavery. You were born right out of it. You're still in it. Because anybody who is subject to white supremacy is a slave. Oh, don't tell me that. You think I'm going to pass that on to my children? Well, then, if you don't, you're going to be fooling them. So you want to lie to them or tell them the truth? Take your pick.
Take
Grow
your
up.
pick. All righty. Cleo, thank you for your call. Appreciate it, brother. Last week, I received a Gmail from a brother that wanted me to read an article, and he said that he had spoken to Mr. Fuller, and Mr. Fuller left it up to me. And I did read it. It was very lengthy, and then I wrote him back and told him that he would have to shorten it if he wanted me to read it over the radio. And this information, I guess he got it from some of it from, what he wants you to do is to sign this petition, which is on change.org. If I had a link, I would give you the link so that you could read the article because you don't want to sign anything without reading it. But he said the petition is to draw attention to the lack of ethics. It's free to support with a signature. Please do so. Okay, Brother Royal, listen. Okay, now I've done this part here, but you have to give me a link so that the people who are listening to this program can read it for themselves before they sign it. So I did email you back and give you this information that I'm also announcing publicly so that you can do that, and then people can make their decision for themselves. So that is where that is at. Okay, 516-453-9921 is the number that you'd want to get in contact with for today's show. Okay, he just wrote me back. I'll get that later. Okay, I tell you what I'm going to do. Since we're close to the bottom of the first hour of this segment, let me take a break, then we'll resume with the show. You are listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. We do appreciate all of your calls, and this is what you can do to call into the show, 516-453-9921. Press the number 1 button if you have a question or comment, and then please, ma'am, please, sir, make that brief so that Mr. Fuller can answer your questions. First-time callers, all you have to do is, when you call in, give the call screener your name so that the call screener can give me your name, and then I can pronounce it. Hopefully, I can do it properly. Ooh, okay, we can do that. You can also Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com, and I will try my best to read it. Probably will not be read today, but on a future show it will be read, and then I will give you, of course, my symbol that I'm using to let you know that I did receive it, and then I will also inform you when it's read so you can hear yourself or hear your question being read and answered by Mr. Fuller. And lastly, you can join the chat room, and it's filling up. Thank you, Rashida. Thank you very much. BSAM721 in the house. Roy, thank you. You're on. All right. Grand rising to you. Okay. But you can do that by going to blogtalkradio.com. Then when you do that, you want to click on where it says programs, and then you click that on. Then you scroll down to the Produce Justice show comes up. You click that bad boy, and then the chat room is there, and you are in. I would caution you, do not use the chat room to ask me a question, to ask Mr. Fuller. This is what the number is for, the phone number. Thank you, Sam from Colorado. Just checked in. All righty. Let's move on with, all the books for the from the show, you can get at producejustice.com. We emphasize that because it's very important that you have this guide there. And when you do get the book, please read the book. I know that some, and this question is still prevailing, about the black people, smart people. What are you doing? How come you haven't solved the race problem? Or what are you doing to solve the race problem? What are you doing? Mr. Fuller gives the answer every week, but are you listening? This is why we started out by saying, if you do not understand white supremacy, racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. My observation is that goes over most people's heads. Could be they don't take the time to really understand that, what it is and how it works. And if you tuned into the first few moments of the show, Mr. Fuller gave a detailed explanation of how this thing works, and it still will go over people's heads. Hopefully it will not go over this brother's head here, and I believe we're going to go to Corey. Let me see if I can get you in here, Corey. Okay, Corey in Milwaukee. You're on.
Greetings, Mr. Bobby. Greetings, Mr. Fuller.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Fuller, I'm going from the revised edition under the area of counter-war. I just wanted to read a couple sentences and ask your opinion. On page 359, you write, "The white supremacist racists collectively intend to practice white supremacy racism forever. Therefore, they will kill or help to kill enough non-white people to satisfy their need to have fun, but they do not intend to kill so many that no non-white people remain. They kill or help to kill enough non-white people so as to frighten those who remain. This is the only way that they can continue to enjoy practicing white supremacy." And you go on to say that they intend to do this forever. This is the race war, the only war. Mr. Fuller, my question is, it seems as if white people are not willing to put an end to white supremacy. Is the best thing, or one of the best things for us to do as black people is just to try to stay away from harm as much as possible? Because it seems to me that it's the Creator that's going to put an end to white supremacy so far from what we've seen that's going on. So is it best for us to just try to just protect ourselves and stay away and just try to be as codified as possible?
Both. That's a part of the code, protecting yourself and at the same time trying to erode in any way that you can, just like in any war. That's why it's in the war section. Counter-war. We're against war. Like Martin Luther King said, we're against war, period. No more war. But you're going to have war as long as you got the system of white supremacy, because that is the supreme war. There's no war greater than that. The people who believe in racism, which is what white supremacy is, racism. Racism is white supremacy. White supremacy is racism. So what is racism? Dominating and mistreating people based on color. That's all it is. And the white supremacists spend full time thinking about better ways to do that. And so far, they have basically shown that they intend to do it forever. The reason I say that is because in 15 minutes or less, all they do is make the decision, we're not going to have racism anymore. And racism would disappear overnight. Black people would wake up and say, people are acting strange. What's going on? The whole world seemed like it changed last night while I was asleep. I know I couldn't have been asleep that long. Everything has changed. It would be just that fast if the white people of this planet said, hey, no more racism by 7 o'clock tomorrow morning, okay? None. Zero. I mean, it would be like it never happened. Can we pull that off? They can pull that off with a snap of a finger because they know how it's put together. Anything that I put together, I know how to take it apart. That's the logic of the universe. So white people who really don't believe in racism, and they are practicing racism, not talking about those who are not already practicing it, those who practice racism know exactly how it's put together. And with a wave of their hand, literally, I mean, the behavior would instantly change and all like that. And then black people would be puzzled. They'd be walking around saying, what kind of world am I in? I'm not, hey, did I die and go to heaven last night? That's how we'll be acting. It's just that easy. It is just that easy. It took a long time to put together, but anybody knows who believes in logic, which is what codification is all about, that you can take, and most likely it will take, maybe 20, 30 years to put up a certain type of bridge or a certain building, or to have a canal somewhere built. But the same people that put it up can take it down much faster than they put it up. we've been born witness to that. Tearing up something is much easier than putting up something. So the white supremacists took a long time, not when you measure time the way that we usually do, like 100 years or 200 years or 1,000 years. No, the white supremacists put together racism and faster than any other system that's ever come up, because they were very smart about doing it. See, the smarter you are, the faster you can do stuff. So they came up with this idea of doing all the world's business on the basis of what color you are. And that took off like a rocket. It might have taken the Greeks and the Romans to think of how you build a Roman Empire, to build that empire, or the Aztec Empire might have taken a long time. But putting up white supremacy took record time. It caught everybody off, all the dark people off guard. That's why we wasn't ready. We wasn't ready for nothing like that at all. We did everything on the basis of tribe. That's why I say black people shouldn't brag about our history. Our history was very uncivilized, even though there's a lot of historians that say, oh, no, we had millions of black people who never even thought of killing each other. Well, that's a hard sell with me. I mean, we didn't have no murder among black people at no time. Nobody killed nobody. And see, that's the criteria that we should be aiming for. We don't have there's no such thing as a civilization that you can call a civilization where somebody gets murdered. Just one person. So I don't know where this black civilization idea came up, because it comes down to one question. Did black people kill anybody before there was white supremacy? Was there any killing under any circumstance of black people killing anybody before white supremacy? That's the question. And I say, according to everything I've seen, somebody got to school me now that there was a time when it didn't happen. Because if just one black person was killed by another black person, that was not a civilization. It didn't exist. Just putting up some bricks on top of bricks. And I mean, it's just a house. I mean, well, that doesn't say you're civilized. You just made a house. Civilized means you don't do any harm to anybody under any circumstance. Nobody harms anybody. Everybody helps everybody all the time. You don't even get mad at nobody. That's a civilization.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Fuller, and thank you, Corey. Thank you very much. Here is that link from Roy that I said that I would give, and that way you can read it yourself. https:// that's two of those, then chng.it/uppercase 8s and then QD uppercase FJW 7 and P uppercase. Then you can read it for yourself and sign it if you would like to, but make sure you read it for yourself. And that way you would know what's going on. Good morning, Black to Deaf and Justice Warrior. Black to Deaf wrote this: those 5, quote, law enforcement officers, end of quote, were white supremacy in blackface. They represent the institution of American policing, which is anti-black racism. White supremacy is an ideology, so non-black victims cannot be, quote, white-skinned supremacists, end of quote. But they subscribed to the mentality of whiteness. 888 wrote that. Black Cop, KRS-One. Check that out. Toussaint in Brooklyn. You are on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Hey, good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning,
I hope you guys
sir.
are having a great morning. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. I just had two quick questions. The question that I wanted to ask you, Mr. Fuller, is it okay to make money to do things that are non-constructive for the hope of doing something constructive with the money that's acquired in the future?
The question is what?
Is it okay to make money or to accept money from white supremacists for doing things that are not constructive? For example, Stephen Fetchit was somebody that a lot of victims, name-called back in his day for doing things that a lot of victims considered to be non-constructive for the sake of being paid by the white supremacists. Do you think that it's okay to do that if the idea or the goal is to do something constructive with the money that the white supremacist gives you in the future?
Anything that you get, including your breath, you take it if it's usable to help to replace the system of white supremacy with justice. That includes your time and energy. You only have time and energy, basically. Anything else you get it from the white supremacists. The chair that you sit in, you get it from the white supremacists. The light that you turn on, if you got any lights to turn on, or they allow you to turn on the light, or have a place where you have a light to turn on. You use it to keep yourself going, because all you are just a prisoner of war on the planet if you're black or a person of color. Black, brown, red, yellow. You're a prisoner of war. You're born in prison. So you can answer a lot of these questions that you ask to yourself. Once you understand you're a prisoner of war. What does a prisoner of war do? Whatever they're told to do. But you always keep in mind that you are an illegitimate prisoner of war. You shouldn't be in a war at all. But you were born in one of somebody else's making. You didn't make it. None of the people on this planet now caused anything that is happening to them now that shouldn't happen. That was all laid out before any people who are on the planet now were born. The system of white supremacy was invented many years, at least over 200 years. I don't know of anybody who is over 200 years old. So if white supremacy was invented over 200 years ago, that means that nobody on the planet now was here when it was invented. So it's just a matter of who's keeping it going. Well, the people it was passed on to were the white supremacists who were taught all about white supremacy and taught to be white supremacy and to continue the practice of it. They are the ones who are to blame for what's happening now. And they're still here. The white supremacists themselves said, oh, you're talking about slavery being in the past. Slavery and white supremacists. White supremacy is the most potent form of slavery. There was always slaves in recorded history. From everything that everybody tells me, somebody had slaves 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years, 5,000 years, even what they call BC, before we start having what we call the calendar, before Jesus, before Christ, they call it. there were slaves. But the worst form of slavery and the smoothest running form of slavery is the system of white supremacy. So slavery has never ended since it began. And I don't know how far back that goes, but the worst form of slavery is the system of white supremacy because it's based on color. They had slavery based on all kinds of things before. But the most efficient form of slavery is the system of white supremacy. It has not ended. So when you say slavery ended in 18-something, forget that. That ain't true. White supremacy didn't end, did it? That's the question to ask. Did white supremacy end? Then you ask the next question. Is white supremacy a form of slavery? Has any professor thought to ask that question? Any intellectual? Anybody except a few knotheads like Neely Fuller raise that question ever? Is white supremacy a form of slavery, yes or no? Well, then slavery didn't end if the answer is yes. Do you know what a slave is? That's another question. Get that straight first.
Get that straight, yes. Lincoln Theodore Monroe Andrew Perry. He died in November 19th, 1985, better known as Stephen Fetchit. But he was a millionaire. What's your second question, Toussaint, quickly?
Yes, sir. Thank you for remembering, Mr. Bobby. I appreciate that. Mr. Fuller, I hear many victims say all we have to do is get rich or become wealthy to end the system of white supremacy, and that's what they don't want. If the white supremacists determine who they call billionaires, in the case of Kanye West, where overnight they were able to remove the billionaire status from his name, is there any amount of money that would put a dent in the system of white supremacy?
Yes, if that's what the white supremacists want. All money comes from the white supremacists. And you say, well, black people earned the money a long time ago. Their foreparents earned it. That's why we talk about reparations and all that. But the white supremacists, they determine what money is, or who's going to get it, and what for. And they take it when they want to. They give it when they want to. They take it back when they want to. If you know anything about, if you just, where does money come from? Just ask a simple question. I worked in a place where they printed money for 32 years. I got an idea where it comes from. For 32 years, wouldn't I have some kind of idea? I'm looking at billions of dollars every day. It's called the Bureau of Engraving and Printing. I would have some vague idea of where money comes from. Neely Fuller with his dumb self. I would catch on to something, I think, about, wait a minute, this is money I'm looking at. This is money that I get a little bit of every month. Where does it come from? Now that's me, Neely Fuller. Does anybody else ever ask that question? Where does money come from? And then ask yourself another question. Do I decide what money is? They say jewelry is money. Diamonds. Oh, who made that decision? They said something else, too, while we at it. Gold is money. Oh, now we move from paper. I thought paper was money. Well, it can be. Who decides what is money? You might have some paper in your pocket, like some notes that you made or something like that. You know, you might have a notebook in your pocket or lying around somewhere. You know, I got a couple of books right in front of me now. They're made out of paper. Are they money? Well, they could be. could be according to whom? Well, Neely Fuller's trying to get you to pay some money for it, called the Textbook for Victims of White Supremacy. You pay a little money. Well, why would I give you money for that? Well, it's supposed to help you to get in position to make your own money. Where you determine what money is. You have a voice in what money is and who will get some of it or most of it or why or when or where or what the value of it is. The code says what in 2023? Let's be straight up. The white supremacists determine who has what money, when, and what it will do and what it won't do, and what you can do with the money when you get it. They determine that too.
Yes, sir. All right. Toussaint, thank you for your participation. And Roy put for those of you who are interested, put that information, it's in the chat room. So if you would like at your leisure or whenever you want to, you can read it. It is lengthy, and you can do what you will. So it was asked, and I fulfilled what I was supposed to do. Justice Warrior wrote this in caps until I stop. It says, "It's not an idea, Mr. Fuller. It's reality. I think what you're looking for is a utopia, and that has never and nor will it ever exist. We're talking about human nature, and to err is human. What people are doing is comparing life back then to life today. Where killing is rampant and commonplace." Cholo Revolution wrote this to Justice Warrior, said this: "Justice, have you read the code book? Interesting. Sam, Colorado, you're on with Mr. Fuller."
How you guys doing?
Well, that background noise is going to make it difficult to hear. Okay, there you go.
Is that better?
It's a little better, but go ahead.
Well, first I want to stay on the line, so please don't kick me off once you answer my question. My question is, and I just can't understand it, even though you've explained it a million times. When you say I'm from everywhere I've ever been and everywhere I've never been, I can't really conceptualize that. Can you explain that in like simpler terms for me?
All right.
I'll try.
All right.
I have said, when people ask me where am I from, I say, well, I usually give what people expect. I'll give them a name of a town and or something like that. But the truth is, thinking at the level that I say under the compensatory code, we should think of the universe when we think about doing anything, because everything is connected. So I give the codified answer for everybody is, I'm from everywhere that I have ever been, and I'm also from everywhere that I've never been. Now, right now, I'm on a telephone. So you can say, Neely Fuller is on a telephone. So I've been on a telephone. When I get what you call off the telephone, I have been on the telephone, but I'm not on the telephone at that time, by whatever you mean by on the telephone. Because I walk away. I have a desk phone here. I walk away from the telephone. I walk away from the telephone, so I'm from the telephone. I'm from it. See, the key word here is from. I'm not, how far from? Well, you want to measure it in feet or inches or something else, or micro inches. But I'm from there. I've been there. Or have you been on the telephone for? Yeah, I've been on the telephone. So I've been on the telephone. That's the place where I've been. Now, what about the never been? I've never been to where I've never been. So I'm from there, too. I've never been to the moon. So therefore, I'm from the moon, because I've never been to the moon. See, it's also a thought statement. It's made to help people think at a level that they never thought before. You're always from wherever it is that you have never been. If you've never been to Pittsburgh, you're from Pittsburgh, because you've never been there. And what do you mean by from? When you take one step from the step that you have already taken, you are from the step that was taken. And you are on your way to the step that you are taking. One step in front of another. Front, back, or you can go back to where you started from. The key word here is from. You're either there or you're not. You're either there or you're not. So you're always from every place that you are not at that moment. You take one step, you're from the step that you just took. Now, I know it kind of, well, what is the use of that? It can probably have a million uses. Because, see, I mean, it puts you at another level of thinking.
Yes.
This is what black people need. We need thought exercises. That's why we keep doing the same thing over and over again. And when we solve problems, because we're trained that way.
Mm-hmm.
We're trained just like dogs are trained, just to go around in a circle. The white supremacists have done a job on us. We can't think outside the box. That's why black people even sometimes say they're frightened when they tell the truth, and some black people have. They're frightened when they just do a thing like go outside of the hood that they've been in all of their lives. Just like some people, like in the movie Shawshank Redemption, they say after you've been institutionalized for so long, after you've been in the lockup for so long, when you come out in what they call the world, you're so frightened you want to go back in. They call it being institutionalized, that you cannot adapt. Everything, and like one of the characters said in that movie, say everything seems to be moving so fast. I say, yeah, you did 50 years in Shawshank. So everything seems fast out here, because everything inside is slow, including time. Time is time. Time doesn't move slow or fast. Time is just time. But it depends on what your condition is. That's the only difference between slow time and fast.
Well, speaking about fast time versus slow time, we got to wrap this first hour up. Sam, call back because you got cut off on the second question. You have been listening to the first hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller. So we'd like to thank you if you have to go. We'd like to thank you, and hopefully that you can tune in next week for more. If you're going to stay, good. You know what I always say, stick and stay, don't go away, because we have another hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller to ask, and hopefully Mr. Fuller can suggest an answer to your question. So thank you. If we made mistakes, we apologize. We are trying to get better. Write us at contact@producejustice.com and give us suggestions how we can be better. Thank you for those that have to go the first hour. We thank you. We'll see you next week. But for those that are staying on, stay right there because we're going to do this bad boy again in exactly 5 seconds. All righty. Welcome back to the second hour of the Counter Racist Coach Show with Mr. Neely Fuller. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. And we thank you. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you for your questions. If you missed the first hour, I'm sure that Robert and the gang will have that on the replay so that you can hear that, questions and answers and what Mr. Fuller says at the beginning of every show that he and I have done, speaking about racism. If you do not understand white supremacy, racism, what it is and how it works, everything else you understand will only confuse you. I've been doing this with Mr. Fuller for quite a while, but it seems like that statement goes over most people's heads, and that's not good. That's not good. But anyway, let's do this. Contact with the show. You know what the number is, but let me give that to you. 516-453-9921. Press the number 1 button. And if you are, and give the call screener your name. If you're a new caller, you don't forget to press it, but also tell them so that they can give me the information, and then I can introduce you, put you right up there so your show or question can be answered. You can also go into the chat room, and they be blowing up in there today. Go to blogtalkradio.com. You want to make sure that you click on the icon that says programs, and you want to get the Produce Justice show, and then the chat will become available to you, and then you can get in there and give your 2 cents worth or whatever you want to give in there, lively conversations. Also, you can Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY @gmail.com, so that I can read your question. It may not be today, but I'll give you a symbol to let you know that that I did get your question and that it will be read. Mr. Fuller was talking about the question that Sam from Colorado asked, and I was trying to do a couple of things at one time, but Reckless wrote me about the effects about Mr. Fuller using the term "from" as the definition of location, and I suggested maybe he could ask him that, and then Recluse went on to say, so in effect we all are located away from where we have ever been and located away from where we have never been. Okay. Anyway, I did read that, so we'll go on from there. For those who have been online, in particular in the chat room, this is Justice Warrior's response to Color Vision. Yes, I have read the book. I have both versions in my possession and had my original copy signed twice by Mr. Fuller. You might want to try that question on a newbie. Okay. Be nice, be nice, be nice, be nice. George, get ready. Toronto, quickly, going to you. What is your question for Mr. Fuller?
Oh, hi, Mr. Bobby. Hi, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning, George.
Yes, sir, Mr. Bobby. Mr. Fuller, I'm looking for a care mate, but within the system of racism, white supremacy, they make it very difficult to find suitable employment so I can take care of my offspring. And, I'm still getting sexually sabotaged and racially dislocated, and the confusion thing's still going on. They're even using family members, to cause problems. And then I get so tied up in trying to solve the problems that, I find that the time is going by. and I haven't found the care mate. So I wanted to ask you, how did you meet your care mate, and what things did you do? I have two questions.
How did what?
How did you find your care mate? And where did you find her? Male to female.
Oh, it's just like most people. You just meet somebody and you wind up spending time with each other, and then you wind up spending more time. That's basically what it is. And that's it. Now, if you're just talking about meeting, now when you start talking about everyday interaction, first of all, get it in your head, you'll never get it like it ought to be. Not under the system of white supremacy. The system of white supremacy will not allow it. It'll never be the way that you want it to be. Both of you have to understand that. That's how you stay together for a longer time. Now, that's just the truth of the matter. You have to already understand that things are never going to be that they should be, ever. Which means you have to have a lot of your antenna up for a lot of toleration of a lot of things happening that you do not approve of at all. But that would be true in your existence here anyway, under any condition. You're under the system of white supremacy. That means you're going to have more things that are ugly than more things that are pretty. That's just the equation. And even a lot of the things you think are pretty are going to get ugly.
Mm-hmm.
The white supremacists concede of that. Now, you can tune it out. Now, you can lie to yourself like a lot of people do and say things are the way that they should be all the way through this mess. No. And if you're looking forward to that happening, it's not going to. That's why I say if you don't understand white supremacy, if you don't have as a goal, your main goal, getting rid of the system of white supremacy, any other goal that you have is going to get sloppy, like some of the callers that have called in earlier today. They're talking about getting what has happened to some of the people who are in the billion class. I'm talking about black people that got money. You know, now in the year 2023, you have a substantial number of black people worldwide who have billions of dollars. Some of them are already dead after they made the billions. Or some of them are all messed up in the minds. And you can go down through a few names whose minds are nowhere near where they should be. And they have at least millions of dollars. But their minds are all messed up like they ain't got nothing at all. The kind of stuff that they do. The kind of habits that they have cultivated. I mean, they could have done the same thing without leaving the hood. An alley in the hood. A tent in the hood. But the kind of things they wind up doing, they could have done that without nothing. On account of their minds are messed up. I don't know if that answers the question or not, but it gets back to the male-female thing. Whatever you're going into, don't expect it to be the way that you want it to be. It's not going to happen. It simply ain't going to happen. The white supremacists will not allow what you call according to logic, the quality relationship. That's what the code calls it.
What's your second question, quickly, George?
Okay. Thank you for that answer, Mr. Fuller. Mr. Fuller, I hope that you're going to be around for the next 10 years or maybe even more, and still talking on the show. But I also want to know, what do you expect us to do on the day of your death? Just say, today or tomorrow we heard that you passed. What part of the code book would you immediately like us to go to immediately? And yeah.
What part? Well, whatever part works for you on that day. I mean, you're still given a day. You're here. And when I'm gone, hopefully you'll still be here. And be here, and be here, and be here, and be here. So what is it you're supposed to be doing with the time and energy? Because that's what you're born with. Everybody's born with that, time and energy. And when you run out of time and energy, you're no longer here. So the question is, what does anybody do while they're here, including me, with their time and their energy? I'm doing it right now. Doing what? What is Fuller doing right now? He's talking about ways and means of, hopefully, and it's just a hope, but ways and means of actually doing it, bringing that hope to something practical, getting rid of the system of white supremacy and replacing it with something better. And that something better would be a system of justice. See, just getting rid of white supremacy ain't going to cut it. You got to replace it with something.
Yeah.
The law of compensation says when you move something, you got to replace it with something.
Yes.
Yes, and so that something is justice. Now, what is justice? Guaranteeing that no person is mistreated and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help.
Yes, I love it. I love it. Thank you, George. I love it because, thank you very much, George, for your call, because we talked about...
Did I answer his question?
He's gone now.
Okay.
Now. Yeah. I speak about that because I did write a piece about that, and I said that, you can do that. Everybody can do that by just doing what, as you mentioned before, but it's true. Start with telling the truth. That's how you begin to dismantle it. But when you dismantle it, what are you going to replace it with? That's the question that I ask. What are you going to replace it with?
And you do both at the same time.
At the same time.
You try to help the people that need help the most, and which is, most of the time, yourself. Okay? I don't think anybody would object to that. Give yourself constructive help. Like when you're riding on an airplane and somebody's sitting next to you, like a 2-year-old, they always tell you that if we lose cabin pressure, what? Put that mask on the 2-year-old first. I mean, put the mask on yourself first. I did it just the reverse.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, that's the result of that tangled mind that you get under the system of white supremacy. First things first, Paul. With your naughty mind. All right.
That's all right.
Okay. Put the mask on yourself, Fuller. That gets you straight. That puts you in position. You help yourself, and then you help the next person, whomever that is, that needs help the most. That would be that 2-year-old sitting next to you. You don't run up and down the aisle looking for somebody else. You got a 2-year-old right next to you. Has no idea what's going on. Okay? You just put the mask on them next. Put it on yourself first, or you ain't going to be able to help the 2-year-old or nobody else. You're going to be out of here into another world.
To another world. Okay. All righty. Let's see here. Let's do this. And don't forget, when you call in, please give the call screener your name, because if I see a hand and no name under it, I'm liable to forget it. I don't necessarily want to do that. From the Gmails, I'm not supposed to mention this person's name, so I will not. This person wanted to know, Mr. Fuller, I wanted to know if there is a difference between marriage between different non-whites. an example could be an Iranian female and a black male, which, according to my knowledge, the first category of people is labeled as Middle Eastern. And between whites and non-whites, the example could be a white male and an Asian, Chinese, or Japanese, etc. The reason I'm asking this, Mr. Fuller, is that in a lot of, or the majority of the first category, especially the parents of the Iranian female, wouldn't approve, while the majority of the family of the Asian female would be more accepting of compared to a black male. Thank you.
What is the question?
Well, wait a minute, let me see. He said, wait a minute, I want to know if there is a difference between marriage between different non-whites, and he mentioned the Iranian female, and a black male, which, according to my knowledge, the first category of people of labeled Middle Eastern and between white. He wanted to know that first. Is there a difference?
Well, the
between
code,
an Iranian and a black male.
Here again, the code doesn't mention anything about any Iranians or anything like that. You've got three categories.
Thank you.
White people, non-white people, and white supremacists. Now, if you're talking about a non-white person, this is what the match should be. Non-white people, so-called marry, or see, it comes down to sexual intercourse. That's what we're talking about.
Okay.
With non-white people should only have sexual intercourse with non-white people under the system of white supremacy. Now, when we're not under the system of white supremacy, that can change or whatever it needs to be changed to, because color won't make no difference. All right? Right now, color makes a difference. So we're not trying to add to the confusion. Or sometimes black people say, well, we just sticking to the white supremacist thing because they don't approve of marriage between white and non-white. And I say yes. Right, a lot of them don't. And I go along with them on that. White and non-white in a marital situation. Why? There's a reason why. It adds to the confusion. And when you take first things first, get rid of the system of white supremacy, then get into bed. See, we're so-called interracial marriage, it ain't supposed to be no such thing as that. It's supposed to be between male and female. That's the best recommendation according to the code. That's the best recommendation. Of course, nowadays they say, well, you can marry a mule or whatever. I mean, which, in ancient times, some people actually did that. So I've been told. But the best combination is male with female. But when you start talking about color, under the system of white supremacists, it causes confusion when white and non-white have sexual intercourse. That adds to the confusion that you already have. See, so you hold off on that until you get rid of the system of white supremacy and replace it with a system of justice. Then that will work much better. It's just a matter of the order of precedence.
I see.
Well,
Mr.
what
Fuller,
comes first?
Excuse me. Did I hear you say, and maybe I didn't hear it correctly, somebody married a mule?
Well, I have seen, reports and whatnot. In the Roman Empire, that's why you have half man and half horse statues and all like that. I understand under Caligula, he made a mule, a horse, a senator.
Wow.
I mean,
okay.
Yeah. And then, according to some reports, Caligula, a Roman emperor, had sexual intercourse with his sister and then thought better of it, if you can call it better, after he had done it, and say she's fixing to have a baby, too. And then he said, well, now, hey, that baby might just rise up out of her womb and take my throne. All right? That baby that my sister's fixing to have by me. So now this Roman emperor, everybody who's supposed to be, these are supposed to be, people that we pattern after. We take up time. We're talking about Rome, the great Roman Empire. Everybody's got to study. So we study Caligula. He was an emperor. Follow behind the emperor now. I mean, follow his example. But I understand that when he thought about it, after she got pregnant, said, we're going to have a baby, me and you, my brother, and I'm your sister. I'm fixing to have a baby by you. And so Caligula, according to something I saw in a movie a long time ago, called I, Claudius, Caligula hung her up from the ceiling and cut her open, his own sister. All right? So that he can get to the womb of that baby. And he killed her in the process of doing that naturally. The baby came out and he ate the fetus.
Wow. Okay.
And his uncle Claudius walked in right behind when it happened. And he had the blood dripping all down on his expensive gowns and all whatnot, and looking crazy, like in my way of thinking he was, okay. And the way of thinking of some people now, though, here in the Northwestern Hemisphere, I don't see nothing wrong with that. Because that's the way we think now when it comes to sex.
Have mercy.
Sex is everywhere.
Okay.
And call everything sex. So why not marry a mule?
Okay. Woo. Okay, moving on here for Roy and also for, let's see, I Am Lions 91, since you say you are a new caller, you can call this number, 516-453-9921. Then you can ask Mr. Fuller a question. Same way for you, Roy. Again, to get in contact with the show, just call 516-453-9921. Make sure you give the call screener your name. Now, to I Am Lions 91, if that doesn't work for you, Gmail me your question, and then I will hopefully get a chance to read it today. I try very hard not to read a question via the chat room, because if I start that, it would not be a good outcome. So hopefully that clears that up. Ooh, man. Tell you what I'm going to do, take a quick break so we can go straight through. You are listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. and your co-host, Mr. Bobby. Now, if you would like to get in contact with the show, as some have, just call this number, 516-453-9921. Make sure you press the number 1 button and you can be heard. If you are a new caller, make sure you give the call screener your name so that I can properly give you an introduction, and you will be heard. You can also Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. Or you can do this. You can join the chat room by going to blogtalkradio.com. You want to click on where it says programs, and then you will come up on the Produced Justice Show, or click it and the Produced Justice Show will come up. And then you can click on to get into the chat room, and you are there. Boy, I miss my music. Okay, let's see here. Yeah, you can do that. Now, all the books, as a suggestion, but this is real, go to producejustice.com to get all the books and all the material that Neely Fuller is mentioning, and these are suggestions that are in the book books, and somebody has even read from the book today. So that's very important, your code book and your guide. So make sure that you do that. And one more thing, please send us your suggestions on how we can be better. Go to contact@producejustice.com and show how we can get better. We want to see what we're doing, how we can make it better, because we make a lot of mistakes, and we don't want to do that. We want to cut down on confusion as much as possible. So you could do that. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Les. New caller. Okay, then I'm going to go to Terrence. Let me get Les in, the new caller. Les, New York. That's what it says. Let me see if I can get you in here. Here we go. Les, you're on with Mr. You are on with Mr. Fuller. How are you, and good morning?
Good morning. How are you doing? It's Tess, T-S, Tango.
Oh, Tess, they have, I'm sorry. Yeah, it is Tess. I'm sorry. Woo! Man, go ahead, Tess.
It's all right, Mr. Bobby. First, I want to thank Mr. Fuller, Mr. Bobby, and all those involved in making the show available to us. As well, I want to thank the listeners and all those in the chat room. Recently, we reported in the news was the death of a non-white individual in Memphis, Tennessee. It is evident that a group of non-white police officers bludgeoned the victim to death with their hands, feet, and batons. What would the correct form of compensatory confinement for these police officers would be? Thank you all.
All righty, Mr. Fuller.
What was the correct?
Hey, Tess, could you ask that again before you go? Tess,
yes. What would the correct,
go ahead.
Sorry. What would the correct form of compensatory confinement be for these police officers?
Okay.
Oh, you're talking about the recent incident?
Yes, sir.
Well, they said they committed murder, so that's for the white supremacists to decide. They're then the ones in charge of everything. I mean, so the code says that when you murder somebody, you should be under maximum emergency compensatory confinement. That's what it's called in the textbook, in the code book. Maximum emergency compensatory confinement. That's what it's called. And what does that mean? That means you willfully and deliberately kill someone. Now, you got to prove that, though. It was willful and deliberate, and you intended to kill the person. That's the key. Okay? Willfully and deliberately. And that's what you intended to do. You intended not to disable the person. You intended to kill the person. That's why it's called maximum emergency. But you also, if you did it, and you did it willfully and deliberately and with the intention of not having a constructive result, meaning you're not trying to produce justice, okay? Like, that's what murder would be called. You're not thinking about justice. You're thinking about harming someone to the extent that you killed that someone and what should be done. And it was with the incorrect purpose. It wasn't in self-defense. All right? A lot of factors you have to think about because according to the code, and it's in the code book, maximum emergency compensatory confinement means what? That's the recommendation for murder, what we call murder. Harming someone to the extent that you kill that someone for an unjust reason, okay? And you wind up in this type of confinement. It means you stay there until you decide to kill yourself. See, it's not what you call corporal punishment or whatever, or the death penalty. It's not a penalty unless you're penalizing yourself because nobody kills you. You just stay in solitary confinement because you're proving that you don't have no business around people. When you murdered somebody, that includes all the black people out here who are right now killing each other, black or white. That should be universal law all over the world so nobody gets confused. You kill someone unjustly, or whatever the reason is. You did it unjustly, with an unjust intent. And you knew that's what you were doing, or people think that you knew. You should be put into maximum emergency compensatory confinement. It's in a section in the textbook for victims of white supremacy, and it should apply to everybody. The world, in my opinion, would be a better place. All right, you committed murder, which means you killed somebody, and you did it without the correct intent. You did it with the incorrect intent. Okay. And you took somebody out of this world and you're still here? Okay, that's the first thing you look at. Oh, you took somebody out, you killed somebody. And then you tried to hide it and whatnot or something. They usually call that, mostly under law, murder all over the world. Okay, so what happens is, not mad at you, but you got to compensate for that death. And the only way to do that is with another death. And the only other death is your own. So since you did it to the other person, you should be put in the maximum emergency compensatory confinement until you decide to do what? To do to yourself what you did to the other person. And that's the only thing, where you're asked to apologize for somebody else. Because under maximum emergency compensatory confinement, you are supposed to apologize to the person that you killed. And there's only one way to do that. You've got to go where they went. Nobody can apologize for you. So nobody kills you. You'll be fed every day, but you won't talk to nobody, not even a guard. You don't talk to nobody ever except yourself, because that's who you need to talk to. And this should apply to every murderer everywhere on the planet right this minute, according to the textbook for victims of white supremacy. Everybody on the planet, you kill somebody, think about it. Not the penalty, but the compensation for having done it is maximum emergency compensatory confinement. When that door slams on you, you'll never talk to another person again except the person, presumably, that you killed. And the person that you killed is gone. So the only way to catch up with them is to go yourself. Now, you sit in there and you eat those meals that they put through a trap door, if you have those type of facilities. Hopefully you do. And you just stay there and talk to yourself. Now, you can kill yourself because you'll be given a weapon that you use to kill the other person. That's the only friend you got. And you should like it. And you should like having that as your only friend. Why? Because that was your partner in doing this beautiful deal, beautiful thing that you did, like murdered somebody. All right? So that's your partner. Whatever you use, 9mm, all right? Okay, that's your partner. That will be in that cell with you, with one bullet in it. You don't really get no second chance now, because you didn't give that other person a second chance. See, you better make that first round good. You better know how it is. Put it to your head, and don't put it to your neck or nothing like that, because you're gonna lay there in agony. Because ain't nobody opening that door. They don't open that door.
All righty. All right, Tess, new caller. Thank you for your call. Do not be a stranger. All right, Terrence, get ready. Up in Tennessee. Here we go. Here, let me see here. Okay, come on. There you go. All right, Torrance, you're on. What is your question for Mr. Fuller? Good morning.
All right, this is Terrence in Knoxville.
Oh, yeah, Terrence,
far.
I'm sorry, yeah.
Not no problem. About 6 hours away from Memphis. So that's a tragedy that happened there. But I'm going to try to lighten it up a little bit and ask Mr. Fuller, does he remember stories about Brer Fox and Brer Rabbit? And the reason why I'm asking is because in last week's story, he was giving an example of just people speaking to each other and getting into conflict. And so, there's that code of no contact, no conflict. But if he remembers the story about Brer Rabbit and the tar baby, it was Brer Fox, who was the nemesis, set a tar baby out on the road, and Brer Rabbit went by the tar baby, a little dog colored with tar, and he spoke to the dog. And, of course, the dog didn't speak back. And so he kept speaking to him, and then it made him angry, and he ended up punching the tar baby, and his fur stuck to the tar baby, and he kicked the tar baby, and he did all that until Brer Fox came and captured him. So, Mr. Fuller, do you remember stories about Brer Rabbit, and was that a way of storytellers teaching us code when we were kids?
Well, it could be. I mean, that's what a lot of those stories that they told have lessons in them. Now, I don't remember exactly in elementary school what some of the lessons were, and that was one of them. But I think just vaguely remember that particular story, and it was about the enemy, your enemy, having only so many things that they can use until they run out of things that they can use. And then that's when they are vulnerable. That's when they put themselves in their own trap, you might say. And I think that's what that Brer Rabbit was all about. And the tar baby. Tar is sticky. And so I understand that, what was it, a fox or a bear or what?
A fox.
Do you remember a fox? Okay, so the fox hit the tar baby with one paw, and it stuck. Then he hit the tar baby with another paw, and it stuck. Then he hit the tar baby with the rear leg, and it stuck. And then the other rear leg, and it stuck. Which means now he's run out of things to stick. And then the tar baby went to work on him because he couldn't move. All right? So it could be a lesson in there somewhere. Tar baby, a black person, you can apply that. You could use that. Say, they do everything that they can possibly do against a black person until they run out of things they can do. Then that's when you go on the offense. But you were on the offense all the time, every time they try to stick to you. All right?
Okay.
Every time he hits you with that paw, he's losing power because he's doing something that he shouldn't be doing. Trying to punish the tar baby, but he got stuck.
Okay.
And then finally he ran out of things to stick, which means now, hey, who's going to defend you against the tar baby? Because now the tar baby hadn't even moved. But now the tar baby can make a move now and just punch you to death. Because you're stuck,
Mr. Bobby.
And they're facing you. The tar baby is facing you, and you're facing the tar baby, but you ain't got no arms, you ain't got no feet. So
How about
now
that?
what? Now the tar baby got 2 tar baby hands, fists, arms. Boom, 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 boom.
Gotcha. All right, Terrence.
Terrence. Yep.
I'm sorry. Okay. Did you have another question or what?
It's just I would encourage everybody to, if they have Netflix, to watch this documentary. It's called Who We Are. It's a chronicle on racism. And so I just put that out there. I thought it was very. It was on Netflix.
Oh, Netflix. Okay. But for those of us who don't subscribe to Netflix, how can we get this information?
I think you can probably look it up on YouTube. It's called Who We Are.
Okay, Who We Are. Okay. All right, thank you, Terrence.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay. Roy, listen, that 516-453-9921 number is the number that everybody calls to get in on the program. Now, if you are having the difficulties that you are saying that you are having, I don't know. That is the only number. So, I don't know what to tell you. But that's the number you call if you would like to speak with Mr. Fuller. And then I just gmailed you to indicate that. 516-453-9921. Make sure you give your name to the call screener, and you don't have that many moments to call in. Okay, let me see here. I had something for you, Mr. Fuller, but I had to answer that. Let me see here. See if this is the one. Okay. This comes from, who is this from? CJ says this. Mr. Fuller, how should codified victims of white supremacy respond to non-codified victims of white supremacy that are looking to benefit from the system at the expense of other victims? Thank you.
Justice. Always, in every situation, think about justice. Try not to harm anyone unjustly. Talk to the person. If you talk to the person, be courteous. You're just talking to a fellow prisoner. He ain't got no power except what the white supremacists give him. And so a fellow prisoner, like in what you call the old-fashioned way of slavery, they would have one slave beat another. Fannie Lou Hamer experienced that in jail in the time of our own existence, not going back hundreds of years. That's happened just like yesterday or today. Just get one prisoner of war to beat another. That's nothing new. But the ones who are doing the beating, they are telling them, do you want to get beaten? Well, you take this whip and whip your brother. Or I'm going to have 2 or 3 people whip you even more. So the whipping doesn't stop. I'm in charge of everything, not some things. I'm in charge. I'm a white supremacist. I'm in charge of everything. But all you dark people, you're not in charge of nothing. Zero. So if I tell you to whip your mother, you can refuse to do it. But somebody's going to take a whipping. And it's not going to be me, the white supremacist. So if you won't do that, I could have all of you whipped.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Now either one of you is going to take a whipping, or all of you are going to take a whipping. So we might elect, well, whip us all. Okay? Say, well, wait a minute, you're not going to tell me what to do either. So I'm going to whip half of you. And I'm going to have the other half do the whipping. How about that? See, when you're in a prison, that's what, a prisoner of war, that's what can happen and has happened in this last 100 years. It happened all the time. It's happening now somewhere. Have one, pick out 2 or 3 prisoners and have them go out and kick the other prisoner to death. That's going on somewhere now. And they say, well, we're not going to do that. Well, you're not going to do that. You're not going to eat. None of you prisoners. You're going to all starve to death. Because I have decided that one of you is going to take a whipping. Now, either take a whipping or all of you are going to starve to death because I ain't feeding nobody. How about that? So do you want everybody to starve to death? That's a prisoner like you? Or are you going to sacrifice one of them just to take a whipping? Now, you got 5 minutes to make up your mind.
5 minutes, wow.
Get your little Negro committees together, because that's all you ever do. Get your little committees and decide which kind of whipping you're going to take from me. Because you're going to get one.
Okay. Speaking of whippings, Justice Warrior just reported that there's been an unconfirmed report that that Tyree Nichols was messing around with one of the officer's ex-wife who, like him, also worked at FedEx. Those officers who are members of Omega Psi Phi fraternity operated like a gang in roughing up Tyree. They likely didn't mean to kill him, just send a message to him on behalf of their brethren who was supposedly offended that this man messed with his ex, even to the point of sending a text photo of Tyree being brutalized. This is the unconfirmed report coming from the streets of Memphis, and not the mainstream, lamestream media. Interesting, but it is unconfirmed. Don't know about that. ProduceJustice.com. Get the books. Second time around, George, you're on. What's going on?
Oh, Mr. Bobby, I was wondering. I wanted to ask Mr. Fuller. Does he really see that black people and white people, can it really work together when we are at war? Because the white supremacists are taught to be at war with themselves, with the animals, and with the universe, and with the creator itself. How can we work stuff out with people who are always waging war?
Okay, Mr. Fuller?
By finding out if that's possible. And all problems are solved, according to the code, by doing what? Questions and answers. So we just simply sit down with white people and ask them, what kind of world do they really want? Do they want what they have right now to continue just like it is, with no changes? Because white people sometimes say they believe in change of this and that. They believe in improving things. So do they intend for racism to last forever? And if not, what's the timetable? It's thousands of questions we can ask. And we can do it real fast. It doesn't have to be a slow process. But we're not doing that. I mean, and when we meet with white people, we shouldn't do things the way we usually do it. For one thing, I have a list of things I just made up recently. If I went to a meeting with white people right this minute, I did this just last night. I just wrote down a few things that we definitely shouldn't do, that we sometimes do. And, of course, black people get stuck in the habits. We call it tradition. But our traditions hundreds of them probably are not worth 2 cents. And a lot of them are very valuable. A few of them. But most of our traditions are not worth nothing except to get us deeper in trouble. So here's just some examples. No bodily touching. I mean, black people, that thing we do with each other, high-fiving and hugging, all right? White people might not want to do that. They say, I will meet with black people, but I don't want no black person hugging me, okay? So we shouldn't get an attitude, quote, unquote, about that. So we just agree. Okay, it won't be no bodily touching, not even shaking hands. Nobody touching nobody, okay? That's out. They say, well, that's our tradition. No. That's not what we're here for. We're here to solve problems. Now, we need to grow up. Stop being childish about childish things, okay? No hand clapping. You know, usually when you get a bunch of black people together, there's got to be some hand clapping. And that's when the foolishness really starts going downhill or uphill or somewhere. Okay, but it starts. No singing. We ain't going to do no singing. We ain't going to do no hand clapping. No. White people probably don't appreciate it, all right, as much as you do. We did a lot of it in church and all like that, see. But when you're meeting with white people, it's a different kind of church. So just don't start showing them what your traditions are. That's not what we're here for, to show them what your traditions are.
Yeah.
No dancing, no hand clapping, no singing, no dancing, no drumming. Yes, put the drums aside. It's white people here now. We love drums. Got to have a drum. Even when black people make speeches, you have 2 or 3 drummers there. They'll drown out the speaking. That has happened to me 2 or 3 times. Let's tell the truth now. I'm trying to make a talk about the code, and there was an elderly, an elder in his African garb over to the side of me, and he's working out on that drum. Every time I'd make one sentence, he'd work on that drum for about 5 minutes. Until finally somebody told him, just, okay, leave the drumming for when it's all over.
Yeah.
Please. Right. And then I was able to continue. I said, finally. Yeah. Between the drumming and the hand clapping, nobody knew what I got to the place I didn't know what I was saying.
Yeah. Give the drummer some.
But that's one of our traditions.
One of our traditions, yeah.
Okay, and don't do that with white people. Please, stop doing it. Please, stop foot stomping and hand clapping and rocking back and forth and doing the boogaloo. I mean, yeah. Well, you know white people don't like that. They say these are a bunch of savages. That's what they're calling us. But they're smiling and trying to put up with it.
Yeah.
I mean, we need to grow up.
Boogaloo. Woo!
Yeah. All right.
All right, listen.
Yeah,
hey,
we know what it is.
Yeah. Listen, people, when you call in, please, get a call screen of your name. I don't know who you are. You know, just a blank screen. 2 people will call in. Now we get ready to close up shop. Here you call in there now. I don't know who you are. Come on now. It's just simple. Get a call screen of your name. Excuse me. Yeah. Okay, you got on. Wait a minute. You got on. What is your name? And what is your question for Mr. Fuller? And you got to do it quickly. Okay. All right. Nothing there. Okay. Right here. Okay. Let me see. What is your name? Okay. Wait a minute. There you go. What is your name? And give your question to Mr. Fuller quickly. Okay. Don't know what it is. Okay. All right, George. Thank you for your call, Mr. Fuller. Tell you what we're going to do. Past tense talk. Somebody said that's Justin Wilson, Louisiana talk here. Last question.
grandbabies. Like that's chilling.
I'm sorry?
Oh, hello. Am I on the air?
Come on, you on. Got to do it quickly.
Okay, I was just saying it's sad because I just recently found out my granddaughter, who was science smart and excelling on the honor roll in science, that she was dummied down with a computer, and now she's looking at pornography. That's just another tactic that white supremacy done with this whole Roe versus Wade, with their kids that cannot produce kids, as Dr. Wilson say, and then they can go and adopt another kid with melanin and make it into whatever they want to make it into. And that's it.
Okay, Nicole, I think that's you. Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you for that info. Always doing something. Thank you. All right, Ms. Fuller, what I'm going to do here, we got about a couple of minutes here. I'm going to have you talk about your book before we close it out. So go ahead, Mr. Fuller.
Now, everything, I try to crowd as much as I could into the textbook for victims of white supremacy. And I got the 2016 volume, and then an addition is the Word Guide, and then some people want the original going back to 1984. It's all on the website of producejustice.com. producejustice.com. But the revised, expanded edition of the 1984 edition is the basic edition. You might just want to get just that one book. But if you want an addition to it, like the Word Guide, how to use words, how not to use words, what questions to ask when other people use certain words, because a lot of words in the English language are very confusing. The white supremacists do that deliberately. So this Word Guide is supposed to alert black people or any victims of white supremacy, people of color, to the use of words and how words are used to give support to the system of white supremacy, and not only to know how that's done and how to counteract it with other words by what you do when the white supremacists say certain things a certain way, what questions you can ask, and what words you use to ask these questions. And that's what the Word Guide is all about. And lots of other information about how to respond to different situations in every area of activity, because that's how the book is segmented in the 9 areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. And how to speak and how to act in each one of those areas is what the book is all about, if you are a person dealing with racism directly or indirectly, including how black people should interact with each other. You know, like no contact, no conflict. That doesn't mean we shouldn't have contact with each other altogether. Got to have contact and should. But every contact, for example, has to produce a constructive result. We can do that right now, overnight. That would make a huge change if we say the only reason we're going to talk to each other is that we're out to produce a constructive result. Otherwise, we're not even going to talk.
Yeah.
Period. We don't talk foolishness. Black people, from now on, starting with this minute, we don't talk foolishness, period. We talk with the intent of producing constructive results and get used to it. In fact, have fun with it, because we say if a black person is doing anything that makes sense, that ain't fun.
Okay.
Because that's the way it is now.
That's the way it is. All righty, well, thank you. Tell you what we learned last week. Well, this week we learned about the tar baby, which made me think about what you said, Mr. Fuller, about pulling a rabbit out of the hat. But nevertheless, thank you, everybody. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for your questions. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Remember, get the books by going to producejustice.com. Oh, now you give me the music. Okay. Anyway, producejustice.com. Final word for you, Mr. Fuller. Go ahead.
producejustice.com. Keep that in mind. And produce justice wherever you are going or whatever you're going to do today and from this day forward.
Okay. Thank you.